Who would make a game like this? Or like this? Or this? Who would go out of their way to make a game that is just such a miserable experience to play? Well, that would be me. I made them, and it was worth it. Making games is an all-consuming task. I mean, what is a game without graphics? It's a text adventure, and no one wants to play them anymore. Then on top of that, you've got all the other stuff. Sounds, music, coding, storytelling, game mechanics, game feel. And then, when you release your masterpiece into the world, nobody plays it, because it isn't that good, because you're one person and you can only do so much. So, what if instead of conforming, we just threw all that out the window and made some total, complete, hot garbage? Make things bad on purpose. Make your game look and sound hideous. We're not talking about amateur games here. We're talking about games that are actively designed to be hostile towards their players. These are games you're not supposed to have a good time with, but you can in fact have such a bad time that the experience turns into a good time by seeing just how bad it can be. What even makes an art form good? Monochrome blue is just a painting of some blue. This isn't monochrome blue though, it's just a canvas I filled up with blue in GIMP. This is monochrome blue. Or is it the other way around? Kimberly Kubis is the person who springs to mind thinking of all this. His games were very expressive. He worked on all sorts of art forms, even if he wasn't conventionally good at it, and he gained a relatively large underground following for it. Without Kimberly Kubis, we wouldn't have Revenge of the Sunfish, an indie classic loved by many. Revenge of the Sunfish outwardly appears to be a confusing piece of shit, basically. But it's actually a carefully thought out experience guided by Kim's game development principles. Deliberately hostile art forms aren't limited to game development, of course. One famous example is GG Allin. He was a punk musician who perfectly encapsulated a disregard for his audience. He has an extensive catalogue of music, which was all terribly recorded and produced, and pretty much universally negatively received by critics. He was also known for shitting on the stage at live performances. For his anarchistic work, GG Allin gained quite an underground following, and whilst he was still active, people still went to see his shows, in spite of the high risk of feces being hurled into the audience. It's of course only natural for game developers to adopt these practices, and produce games that provide their audience with a miserable yet ethereal experience. This has probably been going on as long as people have been making games. We can dig up things from relatively long ago, such as the Mr. Yuck series, which feature a load of horrifying games from the mid-2000s. We also have plenty of modern examples, such as the Game Breakers Toolkit Jam, which I regularly participate in. It truly is astounding how dedicated some people are to making the most miserable experiences possible, and I commend that. Glorious Trainwrecks is a website expressly celebrating games such as these. It works as an antithesis to the extremely high standards put on the modern indie game developer. It wants us all to simply forget about standards and just sit down, create, code things, draw our art with our eyes closed to embrace our inability to draw, make music even though we don't know how by placing random notes on the piano roll. When we're surrounded by amazing artists, it's more important than ever to embrace the shit. We must be bad at something before we can become good. And what is the point of practicing an art form if we don't find enjoyment in it? In the immortal words of Jake the Dog, dude, sucking at something is the first step to being sort of good at something.